Hands-on Photoshop in 10 easy steps, plus exercise. Welcome to this video where we'll get our hands dirty in Photoshop. This throws you right into the deep end and it will teach you the most used hotkeys, techniques and concepts you'll use in your everyday work. We'll also apply what we've learned so far. You'll have the PSD file attached and you must perform this exercise by yourself several times to get accustomed to all these bits of knowledge. However, don't worry if you don't get everything on the first viewing, since it's quite a lot of information. I strongly recommend you rewatch it at least once and perform the exercise several times. Our first task is easy enough. We have to rename all our layers. Here we have loads of possibilities. We can go for something like IC1, IC2, and so on. We can opt for sandwich ice cream, lemon ice cream, etc. You could also use left, middle, right as layer names. So there's no right way or wrong way, just be consistent. I'll go with 1, 2, 3 for now. I'll repeat that for the other row. Remember, it's okay to have the same layer names. It's not recommended, but it will cause no conflicts. Second task, group them by their row. Okay, this takes us in the Layers panel, but don't try to select them like you'd select icons from your operating system. If you drag inside this panel, you won't get multiple layers. Instead, you'll change their stacking order, and that's not what we want. Instead, hold down the Control key and click once on their row. It need not be on their names exactly, you can also click to the right of them. Don't click on their thumbnails though, as this will create a selection. Remember to use Control-D just in case that happens. An alternative is to select the top or bottom layer, hold down the Shift key and select the opposite end. This does the job. After you've selected them, use Control-G to group them. Great. Now double-click and rename it to Row 1. Easy stuff. Repeat the process for the second row. Select all the layers, use the hotkey, and rename. Fantastic. So far, so good. Task number 3 is not a task per se, it's actually an action you'll constantly perform in Photoshop. This means all the time, every day, every time you use it. The idea is this. The Move tool is the first one from this panel. In the CC version, it's now hidden underneath another one called the Artboard tool, but it still has the same hotkey, V. If you select another tool at random, your actions might be limited, and Photoshop won't behave like you'd expect it to. For example, I selected the Brush tool, and now you see my cursor has changed to a forbidden sign. So when in doubt, when something you've learned doesn't seem to work, always check to see if you're on the Move tool. You can do that by pressing the V key on your keyboard or by long-clicking and selecting it from this left panel. This is essential, so please remember it. 4. Stack them from the front to the back. This needs explaining. I want all these objects to look like people standing in line, so one after another. Let's take the first one and move it over the second ice cream. As you can see, it doesn't go above it, instead it goes behind it. That's not good. We want it from the front to the back. How can we fix it? By modifying our layers order in the Layers panel. Right now, this first ice cream is underneath our second layer. Let's move it above it. Yep, that fixes the problem. Now for the last object. Let's move it near the middle stick of ice cream. Unfortunately, it's above it as well on our canvas. So let's change its positioning in the Layers panel to fix it. If we move it to the bottom, it now looks right. One final touch I'd like to add is a bit of space between them. I'll now select one from the Layers panel and click and hold on the canvas. Because I'm on the Move tool, the layer will reposition itself based on my cursor. Let me improve it more. Okay, this is looking lovely. Let's repeat the process with the other row too. I'll speed up the process just a little bit because I'm sure you understood the steps. Select a layer and then move it over another one. If the order isn't right, reposition that layer in the panel on the right. One piece of advice is to hold down the Shift key while you're moving your layers. This constrains your direction to a perfect line. That means you don't have to worry about your hand shaking. Hold Shift and your ice cream will move on an imaginary horizontal line. Great. Number 5 is something you'll use a lot. After working for a while, you'll want to look at your project with no distractions. By entering full screen mode, you get to look at the canvas alone with no additional panels. You can do that by pressing F twice. This happens when you press it once, and now twice. So that's the F key on your keyboard twice. If you want to go back, just press it again. This cycles through your viewing modes and it's easy to remember. F for full screen. 6. Move around the canvas. Well, when you have a big project with loads of pixels, you may get these scroll bars. No professional designer really uses them. Instead, we use the spacebar to pan around the project. When you hold it down, you'll notice your cursor changes to a hand icon. Click and hold and move your mouse around. Now you can easily explore everything on this canvas. What's nice is that you can do this even if you're on another tool. So let me select one at random, say the Type tool. You can see I have it selected by its down state in this panel, but also because my cursor has changed. Now I will hold the spacebar and I can quickly move around. That's great, but what about if you want to check out some extra details that require some zooming in? Well, that's task number 7. To zoom, simply tap on the Z key. My cursor now shows a magnifying glass with a plus symbol, so if I click once, I'll zoom in. I can also click and hold to zoom in further. To zoom out, simply hold down the Alt key. That's the standard way of working. What I recommend is you select your zoom tool, click and hold, and then move your mouse to the left to zoom out or to the right to zoom in. This is how most designers prefer to work. And if you want to know how far in or out you're at, check out this area that tells you at what zoom level you're at in percentages. You can even use that to type in a certain value, say 200%, but it's rarely used and I don't suggest it. Working while being zoomed in or out isn't a good idea, and I'll explain why later in the course. So, how do you go back to the normal one-to-one viewing mode? Better put 100%. Trying to use your mouse by clicking, holding and moving left or right isn't very precise. Luckily, there's a hotkey and that solves task number 8. To revert to 100% zoom level, you have to use Ctrl 1. As you can see, this immediately takes me back to 100%. Let me show you that again. So I'll zoom in really close, and now I'll use Ctrl 1 to bring me back. There you go, easy stuff. 9. How do we duplicate a layer and a group? The command is Ctrl J in both cases. As you can see, we now have a copy in the Layers panel, but on the canvas, we can't see it because it's perfectly on top of the original. If we move it, we can now see we have 2 of these layers. Alternatively, you can make sure it's selected, hold down Alt and drag. This also creates a copy, in this case, a group. So use Ctrl J or Alt and drag to create a duplicate. To delete a layer or a group, you use the Delete key. That's the backspace key on a Mac. Finally, number 10. Shrink our new layer and group. We'll use Ctrl T for that. You can see we have this transparent rectangle showing up on our canvas, and in each corner, plus in the middle of each side, we have a small square. You can use these to transform your layers, but I recommend you use the corner ones with the help of the Shift key. Shift constrains proportions, so that means your ice creams will still look lovely even though you may be sloppy in your dragging. If we don't use Shift, we have to guess how much we should drag horizontally and vertically, and this creates distorted layers, which is not ideal. To discard your modifications, just press the Escape key while this rectangle is present. To confirm your changes, press Enter. If you want to be very precise in your transformation, you can use these 2 fields here. W stands for width and H stands for height. They're at 100%, but you can input any percentage, plus you can click on this small chain icon to constrain their proportions. So, if you change one value, the other one will change as well to maintain its current aspect ratio. If you don't like to work in percentages, just right-click and choose Pixels. That's how I work in my everyday projects. And that's it. If you need any help, I've added a layer in this project, hidden when you first open the project. Here you can see various tips that help you perform all these actions, just so you don't have to rewatch this video too many times. However, download the attachments from this lecture and get to work. Please don't continue to the next video until you've completed it at least twice. Remember to have fun.